Hey there, we are approaching the end of our RevEx Fest, but we still have this final panel that I'm sure is going to be so great. We have so many key takeaways in store for you, so don't miss out. Stick around for a little bit more and watch this final panel. For those of you who haven't listened yet, this event is brought to you by the team at Modern Sales Pros. If you are not familiar with Modern Sales Pros, we are the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. Our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer the toughest revenue questions out there. If you are not a member yet, you are missing out, and you will be invited to join us right after this summit. And I'm so excited about this. We have amazing sponsors for this summit. They're sponsoring not only this panel, but the entire 3 day of events. Um, and as you see in this slide, we have some innovative companies helping us out. So you should click in the sponsor booth at the top of this page to learn more about them. And they might have some gifts and ungated resources for you to use and to enjoy and to make your sales life even better. While you're there checking the sponsors, check out the full agenda of the 3 day event. You might find something that you missed during this during RevEx Fest that you want to get the recordings. So please go ahead and check the full schedule. And if you have any questions, please let us know. But let's focus on this last event of RevEx Fest. I'm gonna do some very quickly, some housekeeping notes, and then I'm gonna pass it to the speakers. They're gonna introduce themselves, jump right into the discussion, and then we have some time for Q&A. So make sure to send your questions. As far as housekeeping goes, it's just like familiarize yourself with Broadcast. This is a great platform that you can use a chat to make friends, do some networking, find new people that you want to connect on LinkedIn with. You can also use the Q&A function to ask a lot of questions for our panelists, and we'll make sure to get to them later on. And also check out the speakers and sponsors booth at the top of the page. But for right now, I am going to pass it to Doug. Doug, you can take it from here. Introduce yourself and the panelists, and let's start this last conversation of the day. I'll see you later for outro.
Thank you, MSP, for the wonderful introduction. My name is Doug Landis. I'm a growth partner at Emergence Capital, and I will be your host and MC for today. I am super honored to engage in this conversation with some of my favorite operators on the planet, people that I have wonderful relationships with and I have for many years. And we're going to talk about what can we do as VCs, as operating partners, as I would call residents, experts, if you will, and go-to-market. How can we help? How do we and how can we help our CEOs, CROs, and sales leaders across our portfolio? We're going to kind of dig into that. This idea of cross-pollination, I believe, is the secret sauce for making our firms wildly successful, and we'll get after it. But first, let's introduce this panel. Hillary, let's start with you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Hillary Headley. I work at Insight Partners. I joined a few months ago after running go-to-market sales operations and enablement at companies like Zoom, MindBody, and Alteryx, and I'm excited to be here today with these wonderful folks. Thanks, Doug.
Good to see you, Hillary. Travis, welcome, my man.
Hi, everybody. Travis Bryant. I'm operating partner at Redpoint Ventures. That is a relatively new role as of June, where I'm going to be focused exclusively on sales and go-to-market support for founders and revenue leaders in the portfolio. Prior to that, I had built the Founder Experience Program, which was our fancy term for platform, over the last 3 years, and joined Redpoint from a career in sales leadership through the ranks of sales engineering and then into direct sales and sales leadership at places like Salesforce, Optimizely, and Front.
Craig, bringing up the rear.
Okay. So Craig Rosenberg, I am now the Chief Platform Officer at Scale Venture Partners. That has been an adventure for me for the last 2 months, call it. Prior to that, I was the co-founder of Topo, which was a research advisory firm here in the Valley. We studied the world's fastest growing companies. And then we were acquired by Gartner, and I spent the last, call it 3 years, as a distinguished vice president in the sales practice at Gartner before joining Scale. So I'm very excited as well to be here with this crew, and looking forward to the conversation.
Well, welcome everybody. What a great group. We are all go-to-market practitioners, experts, arguably in our field, been doing this for a long time. I know all of you very, very well, and I'm really excited you're here. I want to set some context to this conversation first. And can you all give us a little bit of background about how big is your firm, your focus areas, where do you invest? And in particular, how many active portfolio companies do you support? I'll kind of set the stage here at Emergence. As a growth partner, I've been in Emergence for 6 years. We're an early B2B SaaS investment firm. We have about 60 active portfolio companies right now, 4 or 5 billion under management. And all we do is B2B enterprise SaaS, similar to the rest of the folks here on the panel. And I'd say the interesting thing for me, and I'm curious to get all of your take on this, but at the end of the day, like, I'm one person on my team. Now, Hillary, we know that your team is much bigger, but I try and focus on 3 or 4 what I call kind of priority 1 or tier 1 portfolio companies in a given quarter, because I've got to manage some of my capacity constraints. I'm curious to get if you give us all a little bit of context of your kind of portfolio and how you think about just how much capacity you have to support them, just to set the stage. Who wants to start?
Well,
Travis, how about you?
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So Redpoint just passed 20 years. Fun fact, we're the first internet-only investment firm, which seems kind of quaint to say back when it started. And now there are 2 primary funds. There's an early stage fund that primarily leads Series A, takes the first board seat. And then there's an early growth fund that will lead Series Bs. Category-wise, it's 2/3 enterprise, 1/3 consumer. And then pretty broad across that. I think we're well known for things like leading the Series B in Snowflake and the Series A in Looker, also involved with Twilio and Stripe. So there's data stack, infrastructure, and then some applications as well. And then consumer side runs the gamut from social to marketplaces. We just announced yesterday a really cool company that does reusable commodity deliveries called The Rounds. And so you sign up and every Wednesday you get your toilet paper and dish soap, and you do that with 0 waste containers. So they're working on last mile logistics, really cool example of the kinds of companies that we're involved in. And awesome. Active, there's north of 75. So yeah, Doug, the founder experience team is broader in that there's a talent practice, a BD practice, PR and communications and events. And so there's slightly more firepower, but it's still a Green Beret team, not a ground forces. And so prioritization is probably something we should spend some time on, how we deploy limited resources in a way that has maximum impact on the brand, which ultimately is the primary driver of having the team is how we create high founder NPS.
Totally. Well, I mean, look, at the end of the day, you have a fiduciary responsibility to your LPs. And so we're all about driving value so that our portfolio companies have, significant exits and outcomes for us and our LPs. I'm curious, Travis, because your firm has both B2B and B2C, how, given your background as kind of a B2B go-to-market executive, do you get involved in the B2C companies at all in terms of supporting them in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, what happens, interestingly, is it sometimes takes the form of where there are B2B relationships in the organization. It may not be that the end consumer is the purchaser. So, for example, we have a marketplace company where getting involved in what their partner acquisition strategy was because they needed to find distribution partners. There's still a B2B element to the B2C company. So for my personal experience, it's in that B2B area. But with talent and PR and some of the other services that we deploy through Founder Experience, then we can support broadly both categories.
Sure. Makes a ton of sense. All right, Craig, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off earlier. Let's talk to us about the context of your firm, how big, how many active portfolio companies you have and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, with the caveat that I'm just getting started. And so in terms of, I could probably learn a lot from you guys on the prioritization side, but there are some interesting things we're doing for scale, which I'll mention in a sec. But we're all B2B, primarily, software, cognitive apps is like our big theme right now. We actually just raised a $900 million fund, which we announced, I don't know, like a week ago, probably. So very exciting times. Yeah. About 50-ish companies in the portfolio. I did, as I said, I did just start here. So I'm looking forward to some of the prioritization exercises that you guys have already figured out. But what some of the things we're doing for scale. So one is I've built a expert network of non-portfolio practitioners. I did it across very tactical area. Well, I mean, strategic, because we know they're strategic, but like instead of, broad marketing, for example, we have a deep bench in people that have built the, velocity demand gen or SDR or revenue operations. And so that gives us a little bit of scale when the portfolio comes in, that, we have folks that have been there, done that we can bring into the fold. I know that that's traditionally a VC exercise, is the connections. We're institutionalizing that in order, to drive scale. The other thing too is, we have a different approach to the EIRs. Right? We have your sort of traditional EIRs who are market centric, et cetera. We have ex-functional executives. So like we have Sydney Sloan, ex-CMO of SalesLoft. We have Matt Amundsen, ex-CMO of Everstring. We have Brandon O'Sullivan, VP of Sales from Drone Deploy. And Matt's sort of our pipeline expert, and he's our marketing strategy, and Brandon works with sales. So they are, they're contracted on the team where they can go dive in. So we're building we are truly, I can use the word platform. I feel pretty confidently about that. And then the other thing, I bring, as you guys know, I bring a research sort of content driven approach to engaging with folks. And that, that's also, we're creating content so that folks can do things, not just DIY, but, as when they come into conversations with us, that they've got some background on what we're going to go talk about. So.
Yeah. And just for context, just so everybody knows, Scale is it's been so wildly known for being so metrics heavy and metrics driven in terms of how they support their companies. When I worked at Box, I worked closely with Rory for a long time. By the way, you've stolen so many of my good friends from our companies, Sydney, Brandon from Drone Deploy, SalesLoft. It's I'm a little frustrated with that, but because we're actually in the process of building out our own expert networks right now. Interestingly enough, just for context, so everybody knows, when you hear EIR, OIR, it's an acronym that's in the VC world that not everybody is fully aware of. Often it used to be referred to as entrepreneur in residence, where you get a founder, they're looking for their next big idea. So we want to bring them into the fold. They can help us to vet companies and maybe place them into a company that we are interested in as CEO. But now we're seeing this launch of experts in residence, an expert network, or what we're calling ours is our operators in residence. And at the end of the day, and I Hillary, you'll talk more about this because you have a massive network. It's ultimately to be able to continue to add more value to our portfolio companies, because the four of us here on the screen we have limited capacity, and we know our companies need a lot more help than what we could arguably do just on our own. So Hillary, walk us through Insight and the slew of resources that you have available, which is wildly different than the rest of us.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that, but what I can share, similar to Craig, I've only been doing this a couple of months, but Insight actually has been doing this for 25 years. And I first came across Insight Partners many years ago when I was operating at Alteryx, and I was able to experience what the on-site value really is. This really wonderful woman came in and interviewed all of us and helped us uncover and identify opportunities that we could go and do to make sure that we could be successful in what ended up being our initial public offering, or our IPO. And that's where I really went, oh, this is what VCs can do. They're not just maybe behind the scenes and I'm like maybe doing a board deck for them or kind of getting nervous about interfacing. It was a really helpful, like, guiding consultative experience. And that, I think, is what Onsite continues to bring. And it's not just through the sales CS lens. We are able to offer all the way from talent to product to marketing through to a CIO network, and then through sales and CS, the advisory and consulting that we're able to do. It is a couple hundred portfolios. It is a couple hundred people, and about, I think it's 90 billion in assets under management. So it is pretty large from that standpoint comparatively. But I think it operates in the way that I kind of prefer, which is where we're scrappy, we're figuring it out. It grew fast. The team is growing fast. So I think on paper, it maybe looks big, but I think there's those fun things we're still trying to figure out as well. Like, how do we best prioritize these new companies that came in, or where they're at in their growth curve? So some of the early pieces that we've been doing is to take a look at where they're at in their ARR. And I, for example, work on a set of companies with Jeremy Donovan, who, Doug, you would know from your sales off days. We split the companies that are between 10 million and 75 million in ARR. We have a group that's focused on 10 million and below, and then 75 and up. And we're working on our graduation program, so to speak, to make sure that these companies have the best experience possible, not just with sales and CS, but with everything in the on-site portfolio, so that they have a comprehensive exit or whatever delivery they want in the market. So, Doug, yeah. I think that answers your questions, and that hit on that.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
That's such a massive team. So one of the things we've all talked about right now is like the prioritization exercise that we all go through. I want to learn more about kind of how you think about engaging with your portfolio companies, because when I first got into this business 6 years ago, I mean, it was like whack-a-mole. It was literally everybody had access to me. I had no way of kind of organizing the slew of requests and questions that I was getting. And so we've spent a lot of time kind of going through and building out a prioritization model, where we spend our time and where we think we can have the most impact. Because especially if you think, Hillary, if your company's from 10 million to 75 million, that could be a lot of companies. And I'm curious, how do you prioritize who you should spend time with and the impact you think you can have? And then I want to kind of dig into some of the best practices that we want to capture from that. But first, let's just talk about how we choose to engage with the different portfolio companies across your portfolio. So, Hillary, I'm curious how you approach that.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. So I think I'm still figuring that out. But I think, like any good prioritization exercise, it is, are you being reactive or proactive? What is, quote unquote, the value to the business of where that's at? And are they asking questions that you know how to quickly answer in those pieces? So I'll give an example on that. Many companies are going through their 2023 planning. We have content. That's a big part of being able to scale, is, do you have the content ready? Are we able to just start with a response that points them in the right direction? Some folks, that answers what they need to have, and they're good to go, and they can take those actions from there. Other folks maybe want to have an advisory call where they talk with someone like myself for an hour. We get the right kind of context questions, make sure that we're delivering, and we still might follow up with another question or two into what those are. Some of our companies come to us and we realize you maybe need more of a workshop and an on-site engagement, and we'll do that. Again, if it kind of fits the topic and the timing of where we need to go and what we're launching. So it's mostly dependent on the portfolio company that's coming to us, what their need is, how urgent it is, and then where we can fit that in with other items that line up. For me, yep. I'm personally looking at it of how can you give the most value quickly, because some folks can just take a piece of content and run with it and know what to do, or they can take the framework. Sure. And then where you maybe need to lean in and spend a little more time, it's a little bit of beg, borrow, and steal from your teammates if you have them. And Doug, you've mentioned, like, I'm lucky to have that for those pieces, and the rest I think I'll figure out as we go. So I hope that gives an idea, but I don't think it's much different than I think maybe how other folks are prioritizing.
Well, I mean, some things to consider, and I'm curious if you all are kind of also use some of these parameters in terms of determining where to spend time. But the percentage of ownership that you have, potential impact that you can have on the business. Like, oftentimes there's a struggle. Like, you've got 5 companies that are doing really well, a couple that are not doing so hot. You have the same kind of ownership across the board. Where do you spend your time? As oftentimes we hear is, well, let's focus on the ones that are really winning. But I'm also a big believer of the ones that are struggling. If we can help turn them around, you could have a pretty meaningful exit as well. I'm curious, Travis, how, when you think about, kind of the makeup of your portfolio, how do you prioritize, and how do you choose who to engage with and when?
The thing you touched on, Doug, there is the paradox of the companies that are the fund returners are the ones that need your help the least, because they're already great and they're the ones that are going to move the needle on the customers for our. There's sort of three orders of customers I've seen, I guess. The first one is the GPs, like that we're an internal shared service. We support them so that they can win deals and then deliver value to the companies that they've invested in. There's the entrepreneurs and their teams at the companies we've invested in. That's layer 2 customer. And then layer 3 customer are the LPs that gave us money to invest. We know what they want. They want return. So that one's kind of easy. And my team doesn't do it a ton with that. But when it comes to prioritizing, back to this paradox, it's like, well, we don't really do a lot for Stripe because Stripe is Stripe. And so then, then do you get deployed to the companies that are not doing well? And that might take a lot of time because it requires hands-on support, but they're not going to necessarily move the needle on fund returning, which is the thing that matters to the LP customer. So I might be a bit contrarian with this, but in a way, this whole exercise is about driving deal flow as the lifeblood for a successful venture firm. And if you deliver a great customer experience to the founders are highly networked, and they're either repeat founders themselves or they're quite connected with their peers and colleagues who are founders. And so the exercise of prioritization flows to where are the companies that by delivering a good experience to them, it helps us perhaps for the next round of access to great deals versus what we do. Because again, we're not a consultant in the way where we're going to be super hands-on to own and create some deliverable. So we're trying to get those emotional events. Like, we may not give 10 candidates for every open executive, but if we could get one and get them access to somebody that they couldn't have gotten to otherwise because of the strength of our network, well, then that's an emotional memory that if someone asks them, hey, what is it like to work with Redpoint? Then we get a net promoter score, and that helps us open access to the next round of deals.
Sure. I agree. By the way, Travis, there's a fourth customer that we all serve. I'm curious, actually, Hillary and Craig, if you serve them as well. The pre-investment companies, the companies that we haven't chosen to invest in yet, but we're courting, right? Or we're evaluating to determine if it actually makes sense for an investment, previous to doing some due diligence. I don't know about you all, but that's 30% of my time is what I call kind of pre-investment conversations, assessing the go-to-market team, trying to determine, is this really sellable, really understanding because especially if it's on the go-to-market side, the competitive landscape. Of course, Craig, you have so much data and insight about, different landscapes of kind of SaaS companies. So I imagine that would be an easy win for you. But talk to us about kind of your engagement model and how you think about prioritizing.
Well, I'm so
as a newbie.
I'm not. But I understand. Yeah, I mean, look, I understand, right, that time is what my most precious commodity here. But like right now, I'm focused on a couple things to sort of alleviate that, so that there will always be, I think, prioritization probably through the partners, as most of my requests to do anything comes through the partners. But one is, look, if we fund Series A, so like we know the playbook that you need to run. So we're going to be very proactive there on out of the gate, the steps that we need to go take. The other thing though, that, just from knowing my buddies like Doug Landis over the years is like, could we take from, my old days at Topo and Gartner, and instead of calling something content, which I called it initially too, can we call it a service and package it, productize it? That's a little different, right? It's and so you wouldn't say, for example, we sales process design. We wouldn't just say we have this new cool white paper on sales process design. We'd say, well, we have the sales process design service, right? And that way, it's boxed, like it comes out of the box. And because what I've noticed talking to my my buddies like Doug over the years, it's like, what you do have to be careful of is becoming being like the on-site consultant here. And so one way that I believe that we can help do that is to productize the steps that we all know are the ones that need to happen across your, move from founder-led sales to hypergrowth. And so that, that's really what we're doing. The other thing too that we've been doing, as you mentioned, we have really good data, right? We have Scale Studio. So can we look at the various portfolio companies via Scale Studio and see where there's conversion rate issues or anomalies or whatever, and sort of we have, a package of different services that we could approach. So I'm actually doing less about who the portfolio company is and more about where they are and what potential pains they are. Now, when we do this next year, we'll see what my answer looks like. But right now, that's how I'm,
yeah. Well, I mean, look, Craig, part of what you're talking about is we're in the venture business. I'll tell you, we're not in the technology business and we're not in the finance business. We're in the people business and we're in the pattern recognition business. So to your point, like where are they in their growth? Where are they in their journey? Based on where they are, they're likely going to struggle with a handful of things that we've seen before. Now, if it's a founding team that's been there and done that before, to Travis's point, they're likely going to be already on their path to success and maybe need a lot less support. And so, I think there's a number of different ways in which we all look at how we support our companies. Part of what we look at too, immediately once a company comes on board, we just signed one 2 weeks ago, they become a tier, what we call a P1 company for us for 6 months. Full stop. 1 week conversation, weekly conversations with the CEO and the go-to-market team, if they even have a full go-to-market team at that point. Because we know in the first 6 months, this is where you need the most hand-holding. But I also know in the first 6 months in Series A, you're going to go through a series of challenges, whether it's like building your operating model, building a capacity plan, your hiring, your hiring strategy, your tooling and technology, your process. These are things we know you're going to face at Series A. I'm curious for all of you,
Doug,
what is it?
Doug, I just going to interrupt.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I have a compliment for you, and I meant to do. I apologize. So,
please.
Yeah,
they're so rare that.
Yeah, I know.
Trav.
This is being recorded. You're in good shape. This is the one that they'll share. Doug will share. He's like, "Oh, look at this! I got compliment." No, but as we were sort of talking about this packaging exercise versus going in right as a as a quote unquote consultant and keep awake at night.
Yeah, with a menu of services where the founder's like, "What the hell do I do with all this?"
Right. But one thing you've done, which is a really good example, is that you have a unique sales methodology, right? So you have this really great way for them to think about how they sell. So you actually, you know what I mean? You're walking in and saying, "Look, guys, this is how we need to sell. Now let's figure out how to get there." That type of rubric is really important there. And so, as I think about the stuff I need to do and knowing, remember we had that long conversation about your latest stuff, which I love. That's really important there, is that we have a way that we do things. And then that way it's totally more scalable as a result.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Just looking at the four of us, I can say each one of us has like a little superpower that we bring also to the role, right? You come with so much, research and analysis, Craig and Travis. You just have this. You can connect with, engage with any CRO and any CEO at any size company. And Hillary, you're a RevOps genius, and so it's so great that you all get to bring these superpowers to both your firm and your portfolio companies, and they're super lucky to have you all. I'm curious, how do you all capture best practices? So say, Travis, you're on the call with a CRO and they're sharing, they share like the secret dashboard that they've created that helps them to make, strategic decisions 3 quarters down the road. And you think, wow, that's really great. I should probably share this with some of our other portfolio companies. What's your process for capturing the best practices so that you can share them with either new companies or your existing portfolio companies?
Couple layers. We started a process to get key leader groups together inside the portfolio on a regular basis. And so we started with somewhat not obvious to start with HR leaders, but because typically HR doesn't get a ton of love, the issues that they work on are very similar, irrespective of stage invested or company type. There was more commonality. And the theory was that we'd be close to founders through that because they were typically working with the HR leaders on a lot of things as they were scaling the company. So we built a little, birds of a feather group as a pilot, and then we have expanded that to product leaders and marketing leaders. And that's the primary vehicle to get peer-to-peer conversation going and good practice sharing. The piece of where it might happen in one-on-one, I have coaching conversations with 20 CROs. That is I think it comes down to some individual discipline of good note taking that then turns into actions that come from that. And it's, I would say, a bit more organic, but also important as you make it. And, I think, to plus one Craig's comment about the work that you've done, Doug, in trying to codify some of those things that you've learned and then build a handbook to it. That's very, very powerful. And I think there's a lot of opportunity. It's just sometimes things go so fast that you don't think, you hear, oh man, that was amazing. And then it just sort of dribbles away unless you go back and pull the thing out of your notes and get it into the central document that you then distribute to all of your leaders in that particular functional area.
Well, and that also is another kind of add-on question. Hillary, I'm actually curious if you guys have this at Insight, because you've been doing this for so long, but what's your vehicle for getting that information out? Is it Slack? Do you have we just launched a founders portal literally 2 weeks ago, which has both community and content. So we know, Travis, to your point, I capture best practice from the CRO. I can codify it from my notes and then post it into our founders portal as like, hey, founders, or hey, go-to-market leaders, or hey, hey, HR leaders, check this out. One of our CROs is doing. Hillary, I'm curious, what's your way of codifying kind of best practices and sharing them out?
Yeah, I'll answer that 2 ways. We do have a great portal for our customers called Insight Go, where they're able to come in, our companies, they're able to come in and join different communities if they're in product or sales or marketing and see the latest content, ask questions, and really just engage deeply with anyone in the portfolio network. The way that we would share some of our best practices is, I don't think it's different, but it comes a little bit more through benchmarking and best practices. So we do a couple of standard benchmarks around things like post-sales or KPIs, which is where we use the data from our portfolio companies of where they're at. We'll layer the best practices then in truly as a best practice for what we're seeing. Because a benchmark is great. And Craig, you could probably explain this 1,000 times better. The benchmark is great for knowing what people do. The best practice is the more important part of kind of how to do that. I don't know that I've cracked the code yet on, I hear something and I share it. I think the context of that company, it really depends where they're at in their stage. Do they have a DevOps PLG? Do they have a freemium PLG? Are they doing e-commerce? Are they in channels? Like, there's a lot, I think, that's there. And so I think that's a good challenge for us individually and as a team to figure out how to best package that up. But usually it'll be in the form of one of those benchmark reports or a blog that we want to write kind of quicker in those areas. And I have a couple ideas of what I think what I think could work really well, but TBD on that, because it's going to take a team effort to get some of those going. But those are just some of the ways that we're able to share those. Yeah.
And Craig, I know you have like Scale Venture Studio. You guys have built products for your firm that are value add to your portfolio companies and even non-portfolio companies. I love Scale Studio. By the way, I'm a huge Dale Chang fan. And so what else do you do to codify best practices and share them out?
Well, I just got to tell you a funny story because, I thought I was the master of benchmarks. And I mean, I knew about Scale Studio. I didn't know the right? And then I get in and I'm like talking to one of the folks here in the interview and I'm like,
Dale is the master.
I'm on benchmarks. So like, have you looked at Scale Studio like in depth? And I looked in there and oh my God, what am I doing? Like it is, it's incredible. That is one of the products and, one of the services, and you're right, like that's for, our portfolio, and we, publish a fair amount of those numbers publicly. But I will say one of the things that, from a codification of best practices is just took from my days at, in the research business, but also in the media business, right? In the media business, you have this philosophy, which is, publish once, produce many. But in our world, it's say it once, publish many, right? So, we might have a request that's unique, or have a, for us, we're being very reactive also, right? Because I just got here and figuring out what the key topics are. And let's say someone comes in and says, well, look, like, I don't know, I'm just going to give a blanket one, it's like SEO or SEM. And it's like, we give them that advice, and whatever advice, whether it comes through a network channel or whatever that might be, we take that and we produce it into a note, which might be produced into a best practice document. We might do an interview to record it. So we're taking the one insight and then, or a series of them in a topic, and then we're producing many. And, that's, that's something that, I took from the media business. And so
smart.
Good way to take those things and be able to scale them.
Well, look, for founders, CEOs, sales leaders, we need it in small bites.
Yes.
Like, we got to be really careful about, because I wrote a go-to-market handbook, and I'm still updating it because it's never ending, and it's 172 pages long, and I'm constantly updating it. But at the end of the day, I take little snippets from it. I'm like, hey, check this out, check this out. I know, Travis, you got to bounce here in just a second here, but I have one question for you all, which is, what is the most common, and Craig and Hillary, I'm curious your thoughts on this because you're so new to this, but what's the most common question that you get from CEOs or founders, or the most common piece of feedback that you give thus far?
Are we going to have Travis go first, or?
Travis, you're up. Yeah.
Thanks, Craig. You were like, I don't have a good answer yet, so I'll push him out onto the plank while I'm thinking of my answer.
Travis, did you want me to go? I think I have mine.
Oh, if you got one, please. Because please.
So, Doug, I don't know that it's always a question, but I think what I'm finding is that it's really coming down to two key areas. It's almost like a people assessment and then pipeline. So are the people here really, do they understand what they need to do? Can you help evaluate and just make sure that they're good to go? And I think it's just an extra set of eyes and expertise. I mean, I've worked with hundreds of sales leaders, right? And so there's a trust there that I think our team has in general. And then there's always questions around pipeline. Either, is it real? Is it fake? Do we have enough? Where's it going? How do we move more of it? I mean, it's basically just sales is the question for that piece. But I find that most two things come into that. And then you get your tertiary questions. Is it EBX? Is it PLG? How do we shift in some of these motions? Where do we expand it? What does that look like in pricing? But I think at the center of it all, it's people and pipeline.
Are you using a tool to assess the people in a company? Do you go in and you say, hey, I've got this assessment tool that I could use to assess your talent? Or are you just doing that on your own?
So, like I said, we have a whole talent team. So I don't know all the tools in their toolkit, but I know that there's some different behavioral assessments and other things that they're able to do. Ours is a little more, I think, on an interview standpoint and a diligence of, are these the folks that can do that? And it's been really impressive to talk to some of these folks. It's like, no, it's like zero question that this is your right leader. And so that's been really fun. So Travis, I apologize, but if that gives you
no, that's great. I'm going to flip the question a little bit because what came to me was not the question that they ask us, but the question that I ask them the most because they skip over it. And we're working with in the early stage team, which is primarily where we're deployed. It's mostly leading Series A, but of course that definition has changed quite a bit in terms of how far along they are in product market fit. And the thing that I come back to is they skip what feels to me like the most important step of a rigorous definition of their ideal customer. We hear the 3-letter acronym cliche of ICP, but when you ask them, hey, tell me what the attributes are of firmographic, demographic, and psychographic of your ideal customers and the personas at those customers that you are trying to convince to give you money and be happy using your product. And they're like, well, there's this. And so the point that I try to make to them is that step is very hard to do. I don't diminish the importance of it, But if you don't do that, every other question down in go-to-market becomes harder. How do you find these people? What discovery do you do? What demo do you show them? How do you deliver a proposal? Like, all of that is linked back to this clarity around mainly who you say no to, because you can't say yes to everyone, and startups' eyes are bigger than their stomachs. And so that's the question frequently when I'm engaging, is to come back to them with, how tightly defined is your ideal customer and persona profiles? And if not, then let's work on that. And then we can work on all the other questions about how good the pipeline looks, or are these the right AEs, or everything else that comes downstream.
There is a seasoned veteran right there for you people, because that is the very, very first, that is the top of our funnel, if you will, in terms of what do we look for when we're talking to a new founder or CEO. It's like, all right, who the hell do you sell to and why? What data do you have to prove that these are the right folks to go after? And then everything else kind of waterfalls off of that. So yeah, kudos to you, Travis. I appreciate that. I know you have to bounce.
Yeah, my scope of operating also includes parenting, and my son goes to German school, which, as you can imagine, they're very precise about when the pickup is, and you get fined if you're late. So I apologize for bouncing a few minutes early, but it was really lovely to be part of this and everything that comes down from it. So thanks.
I love it. Thanks, Travis.
Bye now.
Have fun with Finn. Craig, I want to go to you on this question, and then I'll give you some of the things that I've learned over the last 6 years in terms of questions that I get asked, that or to Travis's point, suggestions that I make right out of the gate before they even ask a question, because I'm like, I know what's coming. Yeah. Craig, what have you heard or seen thus far that has been kind of pretty consistent?
Well, first, I just wanted to follow up on my two co-panelists here comments. So one is, your customer defines the shape of your funnel. I remember, like, at the, even today, we all get, it's like, should I do ABM or ABX or whatever? It's like, don't ask me. It's your customer that will tell you that, or lack thereof. Like, if you have a tight target market, the answer is yes. Right? If you have a wide target market, the answer is totally different. If you have a self-service centric customer, the answer is PLG.
Totally. If you have a vertical solution that's just to enter the top 10,000 or 1,000, then it's a very different motion. Yeah.
So it is a good consultant, the first thing they're going to ask is, whoa, let's take a step back. Who is your ideal customer profile and the buyers within that profile? That's
where it starts.
Right? Yeah. The second thing I'd say on Hillary's comment on pipeline, it's so evergreen. It's amazing. I mean, I worked for a small boutique firm called Sales Ramp, 2000 to 2005. I worked for this guy named Stu Silverman. Total, if your name's Stu Silverman, you're a guru, right? And
you kind of have to be,
right? He had these two famous things he used to say. One was he'd go in and if someone said, "Hey, I've got enough pipeline," to be like, "Great, I have a checkbook in my car, and I'm going to write you a check right now," because that's never true. And then number two is, when he would make recommendations on what they do to drive more pipeline, and if the pushback got too bad, he'd just look at the CEO or whoever the highest person in the room and go, "I just have a question for you. What are we doing here? Like, do we want to grow big or not? Because pipeline is the key to everything." So anyway, it's an evergreen topic. At Gartner, it's like 70% of all sales leaders listed pipeline as their number one challenge for like 10 surveys in a row. It's incredible. So yes, pipeline is one, but now I'll answer your question. Two things. I think, just to give you something different, has been the strategic shifts that I've been seeing. So one is, with the change in times there, we talk about ideal customer profile. I see people moving from PLG to enterprise or enterprise to PLG. They're adding new routes to market, seems to be a theme across the board. Right. And so a strategic topic
over time.
And then the other one's also evergreen, whether they know it or not, is, especially if they're doing shifting or whatever. But as the times change, messaging comes back to the forefront. The message you used a year ago, right, is not the same you can use today. There's plenty of founders I met are so smart, they know that. And then there's others where it's like, we have to point out to them that, like, well, wait, your market's the same as it was a year ago. Because there's really want to know that one too from a stock angle as well. And so, so message, like this, the big, big, so sort of big topics, right? So you've got go-to-market routes to market shifts and messaging.
So here's the thing that I will tell you after 6 years of doing this. The number one thing that you're always, that every early stage company, every company that you invest in, the very first question, the very first topic to digest is, to Hillary's point, is people. Do I have the right people in, do I have the right butts in seats? Do I have the right people in the boat? Where like people is your very, very first question. Typically for us, and Craig, I know this for you too, at Series A, so Hillary, before they get to you, at least to your segment, but be quiet, Siri. Before they get to you, one of the first things is like, I need to hire a head of sales. It's like almost the very first question that we get at Series A. And then it's like, okay, let's dissect that and what you mean by that. Or if they have a head of sales, it's typically, let's evaluate how far we think we're going to get with them before we know we need to upgrade, arguably, because most people that come on as head of sales at the seed stage, typically you're lucky if they make it to 10 million. Oftentimes they don't make it past 10 million because the $4 to $12 million tranche is the hardest tranche in the early stage to get through. So it's usually, from my experience over the last 6 years, the first dissection is all on the people and who do you have, who do you have in the key roles and what important hires do you need to make? And again, typically it's sales, then marketing, and then CS. Then we start to dissect okay, let's talk about your ICP, your buyer personas, your operating model, and everything else kind of falls off of that. But people, I mean, at the end of the day, we're in the people business. We're investing in people who we think can make significant change in the business and actually go execute. And if you don't have the right butts and seats, I highly suggest you think hire slow, fire fast, get them out if they're not the right folks. We are actually at time, so I want to leave everybody with some parting words of wisdom, given the fact that we have incredible go-to-market minds here. So, Hillary, what would one piece of advice be to a CEO or CRO that happens to be listening right now when it comes to working with and engaging your venture capital investors? What can we tell them that makes it easier and better for them to engage with us?
Yeah, I think for me, and Doug, I think you know this about me, but it's okay to ask the questions. You're going to have questions.
Yes.
And you can't do it alone. I've never met anybody who would know how to do HR and product and marketing and sales and all of these things alone. Like, it's good to ask the questions because sometimes it's not the answers that matter. It's the questions you're asking. And that can, I think, go a long way to help make sure that we are able to provide the right amount of support. So questions matter, questions help. And sometimes your questions really are the answer. You just didn't know maybe how to articulate it. And your teams, at least at Insight, we can be that safety net and help and either confirm, validate, or maybe, shift it or provide a different lens or opinion.
Yeah, but if you don't ask, you're never going to uncover and you're never going to find out.
Yeah,
you're going to be left in the cold.
Well, and it's part of what we're here to do, right?
Yeah.
Is to answer those. We're used to answering those from, at least in the roles we were in. We got asked those questions, luckily, by a CFO, a CMO, a CEO, a CRO, a CPO, a CISO. Like, you do work with all of those folks, and you have a good business scope and lens, and that's what we like to do, is to help and to advise and to move folks forward, hopefully on their success path.
So to everybody out there, don't be afraid to ask the questions. All right, Craig, what's one piece of advice for everybody, CEOs, CROs, sales leaders who are listening?
Yeah, well, I totally agree, which is just, and I would just add on one thing that Hillary said, which is really important. It's okay if we confirm you're right. Like everyone it doesn't have to be everything's broken. You can lay it on the table with us. One of the things that happens in a startup is things are so crazy on a day-to-day, hour-by-hour basis that it messes with your conviction. You're always wondering if you're doing the right thing, everything. And so it's not just when things are broken. Of course, you got to ask anyway, because we might say you're right. And that conviction is really important at this stage. Like, you got to walk through the doors every day, or get on your Zoom and have that type of conviction. So I would just say the same thing, but like, everything's on the table. because it's okay. If you go, you know what, you're right. Go with that, because that's important too. So I just add that.
Yeah. I mean, look, at the end of the day, you're both highlighting the fact that, like, traditionally founders, CEOs, even CROs and sales leaders have been afraid of their venture partners. They've been afraid of their investors, because at the end of the day, you got to recognize, as an investor, when we take a board seat, the only thing we can do on the board is hire and fire the CEO. We can't hire and fire the sales leader, the marketing leader, the CS leader, the product leader. We can suggest it, but it's not our call. But the crazy thing is, as investors nowadays, today, it's no longer the dark side. We're all here to help and to be supportive. And that's the reason why we all exist. It's the reason why Hillary, Craig, Travis, and I, and many others are here in the venture business, to be your advocates and to be your allies. We're also going to challenge you, and we're going to push you. And that's okay. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to leverage us. Don't be afraid to ask the hard questions. Don't be afraid if we challenge you back. It's all in the interest of helping everybody grow and build amazing, iconic software companies. We wish you all the best of luck. Craig, Hillary, thank you so much for engaging this fun conversation. I hope we get to do more of these, because you all are the best. Back to MSP.
That is a wrap on RevEx Fest. That was an incredible event. Audience, thank you so much for being with us to the end. I hope you enjoyed the weekend, and I hope you spend the weekend watching the recordings and taking notes on all the amazing key takeaways that we collected during the 3-day event. So thank you, audience. Thank you, all the sponsors, for supporting us on this event. And thank you, the Modern Sales Pros community, for always supporting us. We will see you in the next summit. It's coming up in January, but also feel free to register to as many events, upcoming events in the Modern Sales Pros website as you want. We will see you in the next time. Bye.